those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all nerds! International. With the hyphen.
Within each and every role player lives this homeless character who wants nothing more than to quiet the heartbeat of every living thing that stands in his way. Today we celebrate this all too familiar character with...
Well now, looky here, it's the Murder Hobo Show.
Welcome to the Murder Hobo Show. We got a Jaime Pierson special going on. Tonight's episode is going to be called Teach Me Crotch-Thulu. What's going on, man?
Yeah, well, I plan on... Too bad this is a podcast, an audio medium only. Otherwise, I would help show you my crotch.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know how well that's going over, but I'm sure in the role-playing community, that would go over really well.
Yeah, helmet in the bush.
Yeah, how's it? So, does the crotch match the beard?
No, I do not have fire crotch. For some reason, I have a red beard, but brown hair everywhere else, including the top of my head. I don't get it.
I'm the same way. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the Scot in me or if it's a bit of Irish or what it is, but I get the red beard and
must
brown
be
everywhere
everybody's
else.
like, oh, you're a redhead. And I take my hat off. They're like, no, you're not. I've never understood it.
Yeah, I don't know what they would call me. When I take my hat off, I have no hair, so. What's new and exciting? What's going on? What's the haps? What's happening in Pierson world?
A lot of wargaming, painting minis, and actually revamping my show, which was formerly the RPG Brewery, which will now just be the Brewery.
All right, moving on. Boring.
Great story.
Nice. Yeah, you're doing an episode on Saturday, you were telling me. Hopefully the boys will be back, and it'll be nice and exciting. I do miss the Gathering of Dorks, man. That was one of my favorite shows.
Yeah, that's the route I'm going to be going back in, which is I think a lot of people liked it because thinking on it, it was a lot like Seinfeld. It was a show about nothing, but for some reason people liked it.
No, it's just entertaining to watch you guys get together, drink some beers, and yell at one another. I think that was my favorite part. Takes me back to the days when I first started playing Dungeons and Dragons, and me and my buddy Balfour would be sitting in his basement arguing over how far torchlight would shine in the darkness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, world's most useless conversations. I tell you a funny story, man. Me and my buddy Balfour had this conversation one time about aliens coming down to Earth and taking all of the money except for 1 penny. That was it. There was just one penny piece left. And the premise of the argument is it worth anything? And I said no. And he's like, it's priceless. And I'm like, it's not worth a thing, right? So it just depends how you look at it, because it's just a penny. We don't have money no more. You can't buy nothing with it. And even if you could, I mean, so like, and he's like, yeah, but there's only one. It's the last one ever. So that would make it invaluable. And I'm like, but nobody's got money to buy it with.
And that sounds exactly like the way we used to argue on that show.
Totally sounds like the Gathering of Dorks. Oh, that's fantastic. You got a name for the new show?
It's just going to be the Brewery. Basically, I'm dropping the RPG off of the RPG Brewery and just... It's going to be more of a variety show now about, place for nerds, geeks, and dorks, basically.
Talk about anything and everything?
Yeah, like before April, I planned on having me, my buddy Will, of course, hopefully Blaine, and a newcomer to my table, John. And we want to do a full show about Game of Thrones and talk about what we think is going to be coming up for the final season.
April, next month. I'm super stoked.
I know, dude. And we got a lot of theories bouncing around, so I want to get it on a podcast and get it out there.
Yeah, when does it start? It's the beginning of April or something?
Yeah, I want to say it was April 8th or 7th or something like that.
I've put it in the mental note category of I know it's in April, and that's as detailed as that needs to get.
Yeah, yeah. I'll see it pop up.
April comes around, and I'll be like, oh, yeah, man,
exactly.
We've had a bunch of snow up here, and I haven't been doing much but sitting around watching TV. I checked out all of Umbrella Academy. I don't know if you've seen that.
I've seen the previews on Netflix. How is it?
It's decent. It had a really compelling story. It was interesting. Nothing sort of jumps out at you in the sense of, oh, I expected that to happen. Like, you know what I mean? Like the like it was my big beef with what was the stupid Danger Will Rogers show. It's tormented my brain so much. Last year it came out on Netflix. Me and Lamoureux.
Oh shit! Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I didn't even watch it.
Oh, it's horrible, dude. It's horrible. You want to know how that show goes? That show goes, pick a scenario, and then immediately think of the first thing that would go wrong with that scenario, and then that's exactly what happens.
A very predictable show.
It's so bad. She's like episode 1. They of course they land on a glacier. Of course the ship is so hot that it sinks underneath the glacier. So then they got to go into the ship, but it's flooded. Then some other stupid stuff. They manage to get it unflooded. Then they get some things out of it they need. And of course the girl that has this suit on, she goes in there, and the ice like instantly freezes as she's like seconds from the top. You know what I mean? She's like a foot, and it's like, oh, like you just see it coming. But yeah, that was pretty good. Umbrella Academy was pretty sweet. What else did I watch? I've been watching The Travelers, which is pretty good. It's about a post-apocalyptic future where there's like a supercomputer that's called the Director, and it does all of these calculations and figures out multiple sort of like dimensional paths or alternate universes, and then figures out who he needs to come back and assassinate to sort of make the world or what needs to happen. It would actually make a really good setting for a role-playing game of any kind, because what happens is in the first episode, they come back in season 1, episode 1. These teams of 5 travelers come back. You have a historian guy that knows a bunch of information. You have the leader. You have a medic. You have the muscle. And there's usually one other guy. And they come back from this apocalyptic future where they're eating like porridge all the time and gruel, and there's no animals, and they live in these shelters and stuff. And then they appear in people's bodies, but the bodies that they're taking over are only people that would die. So you see this like estimated time of death, and then the clock ticks down, right? And then all of a sudden this consciousness from the future gets put in this body, and they divert it from the guy from dying or whatever. And then, yeah, they have these teams and they go on missions and stuff. So this asteroid was supposed to hit, and they were going to make this laser beam, and it was supposed to deflect this asteroid.
Frickin' laser beam?
Yeah, super duper conductor X-ray laser beams. But yeah, no, it's really good, man. And so they go on all these missions and stuff like that, and they come back. But it's one of the sort of the coolest, because I really hate time dimensional stuff, like even Terminator and whatnot. You know, coming back from futures, and you know, why not just come back a day earlier or get him when he's a baby? You know, that stupid theory.
Right.
So yeah, this is actually pretty good. They explain it that there's like, you can only come back into an adult human, I think it's once. And because the brain can't take it, and they can only bring their consciousness back. They're actually not sending back anything physical, so they have to work with what they got. The one guy's a drug addict, he's a heroin addict, and he's the historian, right? And so he's like, all of a sudden he's got to deal with getting high all the time because there's no heroin in the future. It's really cool. The Travelers or something like that.
That sounds like that setting you guys reviewed over on the Wild Die.
Which one was that? Because I'm horrible
some time traveler one that the boys that did Beasts and Barbarians.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on what it's called.
Yeah, it was some type of time traveler system or setting for Savage Worlds. So it sounds a lot like that, because I remember you guys talking about they can only take X amount of things back with them or whatever.
Yeah, and then we're like, why doesn't somebody else just bring it? I remember that now vaguely.
Yeah,
there was a real smooth answer for why doesn't somebody else just like wrap it in flesh and bring it back then?
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
What I mean? So yeah, I've been doing a bunch of that and watching TV. I had 3 weeks off where I didn't turn a wheel. It was pretty good, so I did a lot of stuff. But yeah, time travel stuff is not my foyer, just like Cthulhu is not my foyer. So I asked Eric who the man is to talk to, and he told me you were it. You're the guy.
No, I don't know if I'd go that far. I believe I told you, I think I'm fair at best, but I'll give her a go here.
That sounds like all of a sudden I'm imagining a sexual proposition. I heard you were good. I don't know about that. I'm fair at best, but I'll try it out.
All it takes is $10 and a bottle of cheap whiskey.
Right? You ever hear that joke? Oh, never mind. Because I'm gonna blow it. It has to do with don't look down. Don't look down. What does a guy hanging from a cliff have in common with you getting a blowjob from your grandma? Both people are thinking, don't look down, don't look down, don't look down.
Yeah. Or just let it happen.
So, wow. All right. I'll probably cut that part out. Probably not. It wasn't too bad. So this is what I got going on. This is the premise. Usually, like David Scott from the Savage Worlds GM Hangout podcast, he likes his fantasy or his RPGs based in some semblance of, I want to say reality, but that's such a dumb term to say. You know what I mean? Like, I like my adventures that I enjoy would be going after some goblins. I know what I'm getting into. You know, I have this sense that I could accomplish that task. I don't like stuff that deals with gods or deals with beings or beasts or things that I have no control or ever would have a chance of destroying. So I've never really been into Cthulhu. But my local gaming store, excuse me, is running this 40-man Cthulhu-based 5e game, and I have never really paid any attention to Cthulhu stuff. I mean, I know it's out there. I know Lovecraft. I know all of that stuff. So what I need to know is, in a nutshell, what is Cthulhu? Like, what am I looking at here?
Okay, so let me get this out there and put disclaimer on this. Again, I don't claim to be an expert, but I will definitely give you my opinion of what I think this stuff is. So in a Cthulhu type, are you asking Cthulhu itself or a Cthulhu style game?
Cthulhu style. I'm under the impression that it's just the style of.
Okay, so obviously heavy investigation, uncovering that which should not be known. And what is so important about that is a Cthulhu style game. What's important about a Cthulhu style game is, first and foremost, your players be willing to accept their characters going a bit loopy, if you will. Letting them buy into the fact that they're dealing with the unknown, and there's a certain point at which the brain just snaps and it can't deal with what it's actually comprehended. So it would be a lot like if you were to walk down the street and all of a sudden you saw a real vampire. Gary's going, no, this is bullshit. I know it's bullshit. This has got to be some kind of gimmick. But once you understand and realize what you're seeing is real and true, your mind would bend. Everything you truly know just got thrown out the window. And that's what a Cthulhu game really is.
Interesting. So much more than I thought it would be. And when you said it involves investigation, I'm like, now I know why Eric pointed me towards you, because when we ran, our ETU was heavy investigation, and it was super fun. That was like some of the most memorable moments. But a lot of what ETU is also investigation. Going here, checking things out, going over here, checking things out. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now,
yeah, that's why a lot of people say that East Texas University is Scooby-Doo meets Cthulhu. Because in East Texas University, you're dealing against things that shouldn't be happening also. You know, spirits and ghosts and all that kind of stuff.
Who said that?
Anybody. Scooby-Doo and Cthulhu? A lot of people.
So yeah, I was always under the impression that, you know, because every time I see Cthulhu, it's like octopus, giant octopus thing. Right. You know, shadows in the background, it's always looming. Did you not run something with, I want to say Jim Parton, where he was like a starting detective or something like that? He ended up in some guy's house. They went into the basement. Was that your game?
Yes.
Because I remember listening to the podcast, but it's very vague, and I'm pretty sure Jimmy's well-versed in Cthulhu as well, because he played the madness bit to a T, which was interesting to see. Like, he fell for what you were saying. He fell for that hook. He went on and did some things. I remember him just shooting into the darkness at some point, and I think he shot one of his buddies or something like that, because he played it up so well. It
was the other way around, yeah. I think Frank shot Jim's character, but yes, exactly. And that's part of the let the player let go of this feeling of I have to win, which I don't care what anybody says. You know, guys like you and me, when we play RPGs, we love to see the failure aspect. That's what makes everything interesting. But there's still always this sense of I want to accomplish something and I want to be victorious. Where in a Cthulhu game, think about that horror movie where you see something coming, and even though you know it's going to happen, just watching it happen is either gruesome or satisfying, depending on your mindset. And that's what happens in a Cthulhu game too, is the player let go of that idea of, but I have to beat it, and just what's going to make this the most memorable and interesting situation right now.
I'm wondering how I'm going to get player buy-in, because I can see that being the biggest problem. Like, if the players are going to show up for this 40-man, and then we're going to spring Cthulhu on them, and they're not well-versed in what Cthulhu is, like I'm not, and they wouldn't, really stop to think that, okay, they need to buy into madness or play. This is going to be fifth ed, right? So there's madness rules already built in. I'm wondering, how do I get player buy-in? Like, do I have to have a grown-up conversation with them right out of the gate? Adult conversation?
Yeah, I hate that phrase, but yeah, I really think so. I think that the conversation, I've done it before with in Cthulhu games where I tell the players that have never played, I'm like, you just have to trust me that in the end, I'm looking for what's going to make the most interesting story that we're going to talk about in the future. And one of the rules in Cthulhu itself, in Call of Cthulhu, and I don't remember 5th ed on the madness rules and stuff like that, but the way it works in Call of Cthulhu is if you take so much sanity loss in any given time, the GM actually takes control of your character. So that could potentially be something that your players might be a little interested in if you preface it by saying, look, I just want to have the best outcome possible. And sometimes that means, I guess in Dungeons and Dragons, that would be, sticking a longsword through your own throat, whatever the case may be, and tell the players, look, show up with multiple characters and expect them to die off or go insane.
I'm taking notes. Adult conversation, multiple characters.
Railroad.
Right, railroad. Player agency.
Yeah, that's rule number 1.
That's too sweet.
I think that's a big part of it. Like in that particular Cthulhu game you were talking about, this was the first real Cthulhu game I ran, the one you were talking about with Frank and Jim. Jim's character actually hit that point of madness for a moment, and for a brief second I took control of his character. There was a ghoul, which is a little bit different in Lovecraft world versus a ghoul in, say, D&D, but anyways, it made him snap out of his mind. And so when I took control of his character for a moment, I narrated that he was standing on this cliff edge, that he just stood perfectly still and was doing like the trust fall, but falling forward towards the ghoul. He just lost his mind, didn't know what he was doing. And that made for a really cool scenario because that gave Frank's character a chance to react, grab his character, slap him out of it, and then they ran. But it was just that one brief moment where Jim himself was sitting there as a player going, oh shit, what's going to happen to my character right now?
Interesting. That's kind of what my next question was like, what's the appeal to a situation like that? Is it just the role playing? Because there doesn't ever seem to be like, when you would normally go, there's an end where you win, right? I killed all the bugbears. I got the gold. I'm heading back to town to party it up, kind of a thing. Well, what's the appeal with the Cthulhu when you're just going mad and the game ends when you shoot yourself in the face and you like poop your pants?
That is winning in Cthulhu.
I guess so, yeah.
I've ran this one scenario twice now where people go to a insane asylum, and I'm sorry, you probably heard that on my end. These people go to this insane asylum, and the victory condition at the end, in fact, I ran it on my show, the victory condition at the end was who lived. If you lived, you beat that scenario.
So that can be the premise, is just who the winner is. What are some typical Cthulhu storylines or adventures like, and what would be the best system, or not? Let's not say the best system, but what's a good system for getting into Cthulhu?
Well, I think Call of Cthulhu naturally itself, I think the system itself is absolutely fantastic. I mean, there's all sorts of things about it that I really like, but the biggest thing about the Cthulhu system and why I believe it works so good is it's very skill based. Lot of skills. There's probably like 40 something skills, 50 something skills in Call of Cthulhu. And it's because you want to have that specialized character in a very particular field. It could be photography. It could be you're a university professor of anthropology. So, I'm trying to keep it on track with what you guys are doing though with 5th ed. And that makes it a little bit more difficult because it's so streamlined in the skills that when it comes to investigation, what are the player's strong points going to really be? Because uncovering the truth, and I'm using air quotes, I know this is a podcast, but uncovering the truth is one of the great big appeals to Cthulhu as far as playing it. Like, have you ever read the story At the Mountains of Madness?
Sounds familiar, but I'm not sure.
The long and the short of that story is at the end of the story, the guys that were researching in Antarctica, they found out that the whole human race was basically spawned by a joke by these ancient beings who actually came to Earth millennia ago. And that's the whole thing. And when he realized that, and they actually see a Shoggoth, they just snap. One of the guys' minds just snaps, and he never comes out of
it. Nice. I have heard somebody talk about that before. Now that you mention it, I've heard tale of that. So there is an actual like Cthulhu system.
Mm-hmm.
That is modern day. Is it era specific or?
They have various different eras. The standard Cthulhu era is they call it the Lovecraftian era because that's when he was alive and doing his writing is in the 20s. That's the most popular time frame to play in. But they have, Gaslight Cthulhu. They do have modern day Cthulhu, like one of the one-shot adventures they have out there is called The Derelict. That's a modern day adventure. But then they also have they came out with this 7th edition scenario called Reign of Terror, which takes place during the French Revolution. So it literally spans any time and place that you want to play it. I think it's in the 16 or 1700s or whatever that was. I'm not a history buff, but you know what I'm saying.
No, yeah, I absolutely got you. Lamoureux was telling me that you played some Primeval Thule. Is that? Go ahead.
Okay, so that I played a session that Chris ran for us at Con on the Cob the first year we went out there. So what's really cool about that? Touch of history here too that makes Primeval Thule really cool and makes sense. This might actually touch some of your listeners too on the idea of that makes more sense now. So Robert E. Howard, who wrote Conan, or Conan, however you want to say it, and Lovecraft were I don't know if I want to say friends or pen pals or whatever, but the fact of the matter is they kind of helped each other out, so to say, back in the day. So Robert E. Howard actually helped with the idea of the Cthulhu mythos and actually has elements of that in his Conan universe. So there is a touch of that. So that's what Primeval Thule, from my understanding when I play with Chris, is just basically Conan with a mix of Cthulhu.
Nice. I prefer Conan, but Conan made me really think of you know what I mean?
the flying Conan.
Right? She just comes at you all buffed the stuffed Bagwell. Great big broadsword.
You are prey to Jesus.
That's right. I'm going to take you to the ministry.
You'll come to church.
Oh my God. Conan. We got to do that. This is how that stupid Grandma World game was spawned.
Yeah.
We're going to do the Conan adventure. You think you're going after Conan is the bad guy, but it turns out it wasn't Conan, it's Conan, and she's going to convert you.
Yeah. Save versus confession.
Oh, that is fantastic. So Primeval Thule is basically Conan with a touch of the same kind of a deal, some kind of creature that would just make your mind pop, essentially.
Right. And now, so for the Cthulhu games, Cthulhu is just that became the go-to name for the genre, but that's just like the most popular story, whatever, from my understanding of Lovecraft's writings, which I don't understand, but that's everybody calls it Call of Cthulhu, and because Cthulhu is a big name. But there's all kinds of elements that can play into a Cthulhu-style game that doesn't have to just be quote-unquote Cthulhu itself. Like I have yet to ever run or play in a Call of Cthulhu game that even deals with Cthulhu. There's this whole pantheon of these elder things that, will snap and bend the mind. And that's what it's all about, is you go and you find these cults and stuff that are trying to bring these elder things back to the earth to basically level the earth.
Mm-hmm. Absolute destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
So that could be actually, I'm sorry to cut you off there, but that could be a good element for a D&D game. I mean, having cultists and stuff like that for Cyric or Bane or whatever, that's not uncommon in a D&D game. So if it had the twist of, they're trying to bring back, they're worshiping Bane and look, a demon. No, they just summon Cthulhu and you just licked your own toe and now you're pissing yourself sitting in the corner.
Tears are flowing. So it does it really matter if you meet the big bad guy in the end? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, my games have conclusions. That's the stuff that I like. But this game doesn't seem to have a conclusion. Like I said, I think I've played Cthulhu and loved it because I've always said that ETU is such a sleeper system. And if you're making reference to that being Cthulhu, like, I can see where it's coming from, because we did a lot of investigation and then we ended up fighting some weird crazy spirit or trying to figure out how to defeat it or turn it back to wherever it came from. And those sessions, all of them were fantastic. Like, I absolutely loved that.
Yeah, I mean, to put it to a D&D level, your aberrations is a really good example of Cthulhu style monsters. I mean, look at a mind flayer, for Christ's sakes. I mean, you might as well call it miniature Cthulhu.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Beholders, that kind of thing. The only difference is, typically in a D&D world, that's the kind of stuff that's like, oh shit, it's going to kill me. Fireball. Whereas in a Cthulhu style game, you're uncovering these clues, and the player buy-in side of it is trying to figure out what it's all leading to, and it comes to that big aha moment. Like that one I ran on the brewery or whatever, where they went to go find their uncle who checked himself into a asylum just to kind of get a little mental R&R. Well, they wouldn't let him go. So they're trying to figure out the whole time, like, look, dude, he's totally sane. You're holding him here against his will. And now when they finally meet up with him and talk to him, he's telling them, look, they're going to sacrifice me on the new moon. Something's not right here. I'm being held here against my will. They start to uncover all this stuff just to find out on that new moon. They get there, and there's this big sacrificial ceremony going on, and this Ligor comes out of the lake. And everybody's like, what the hell is this thing? And the whole time he was being held there against his will because a Ligor was controlling the superintendent of the asylum and wouldn't let this guy go because he needed to be the sacrifice.
So you would use the madness rules to sort of break your players to keep them from just basically, like, what all players would do is never run away. So, fight
Right.
to the death.
Yeah, exactly. Because the players I had, Jim and Frank did it. Jim was playing I think he was playing a Catholic priest, and he was like, I'm going to go up to the lake and, use the power of God to banish this demon back to wherever it came from or whatever. And, I leveled him, but
You don't mean he gained experience. You mean he got like...
No. he became pink mist.
Oh, that is frickin' sweet. Okay,
and
so
yeah, that's a good point. Get that player buy-in, man. Just go, look, use movie examples for them to kind of understand the genre a little bit. And I tell this to so many people. If you really want to understand the genre, and it's a fantastic film in modern day, I believe it's still on Netflix. It's called The Void. You watch that movie, you will fully understand what the Cthulhu style game should be played like.
all right, making notes. Don't need an ending to win. The Void. I'm writing this all down, man. I'm learning some things. What else was I going to ask you? What are some good resources?
The Void, of course.
Yeah, okay. The movie, The Void. Is there other good ones? Like,
it depends on what style you want. See, I didn't know all this stuff just a couple years ago until I really started learning from my buddy Frank. So there's Cthulhu style stuff, and then there's more Lovecraftian style stuff. So for a D&D game, you're going to want to stick to the Cthulhu style stuff. In the Mouth of Madness is a decent version of a movie, but that kind of teeters between Lovecraftian and Cthulhu because it has more to do with, you're going a little bit loopy in the head. And, it's got the Cthulhu monsters and stuff at the end or whatever, but that's not too bad. If anybody has the time to read it, I cannot recommend At the Mountains of Madness enough.
what about Stranger Things? That's Cthulhuian as well?
You know what? Yeah, that's a good example. That's a really good example because the kids are fighting the Demogorgon and they think it's all bullshit until they finally see it.
I hate those kids. I'm just kidding. That was a good show. I watched both seasons. I just said that because Uncle Jay might listen. Do you know that Uncle Jay's kid is the dude missing the teeth with the curly hair? That's his cousin or nephew?
Yeah, it's his cousin. Yeah, I remember he sent us pictures. What's that kid's name in the show? I don't remember now, but yeah, that's his cousin. Yeah.
I hope they do a third season of that.
They are.
So the
I wish they
Cthulhu
would.
stuff then really, for what I'm doing with my 5th ed, the Cthulhu rules would sort of be pointless because they're its own rule set. So there's really not much point into going into something like that. And Primeval Thule, is that like a 2D20 system?
No. They're actually Primeval Thule they did for Savage Worlds and 5th ed.
That's right. What am I thinking, man? So there is a Savage Worlds edition of Primeval Thule. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna have to check that out because at least if I'm reading that, I'm learning something that I can use in the future. This 40-man one shot is really like when they told me Cthulhu, I was just like, oh. The last couple we've done have been pretty cool. We had a 3-session sort of deal where the party gets together, they go on a quest, they find this MacGuffin. Then the second session, when they find the MacGuffin, it portals them into this deal where anybody that died on the way there, they then had to fight each other. So it sort of became second round PvP. And then whoever survived that got to go up against a beholder? No, was it a dragon? I don't remember what the big bad guy was. But there was 20 people survived. And could you imagine 20 people trying to hack down this giant monster right at the end, and we're trying to wrap it up, and we're like, okay, everybody roll your dice. We had to pile them into groups and stuff like that, which was pretty neat. So
Cthulhu is going to be good for process of elimination, because if you do it to where 1 and out or whatever, and again, I don't remember the madness rules in 5th ed, but if there's a way that they totally snap and lose their mind and then they're out, then it could happen pretty quick. The only difficult part I could really see happening in this, and again, I don't remember the madness rules, is when you play a game like Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, you're talking high fantasy, everything is believable. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's just a new thing to walk up and try to kill.
Gotcha.
Whereas the premise behind a Cthulhu game is you're the average Joe who is learning that those things are real. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I do have the ETU stuff. I'm wondering if I'm going to go back and look through some of that. Is there one of the ETUs in particular that you can think of off the top of your head that would be easily convertible into 5th edition? I'm trying to think of what we did. I remember there was the one we went camping. We went into the woods and smashed down the headless guy.
Yeah, Headless Jim or whatever his name was. Yeah.
Then there was
that's a good example right there. Folklore. That's what a lot of that stuff is. It's like, oh, they talk about the Loch Ness Monster. Well, we heard about the Loch Ness Monster forever. What would happen if you're standing there and this thing actually pops up out of the lake? You're going to fucking snap.
Hell yeah, I'm going to make $1 million taking pictures. Everybody's got cell phones nowadays, man.
Yeah, I know. It'd be that one last penny.
I'll throw in my smallest, most useless child. Maybe it'll come over and,
one of the exchange students.
Right. That's even a better idea now that now that you mention it. I got a Brazilian boy 6 feet from me that way. Oh, sorry, Guto, in you go.
I need to make money.
Can you swim in Brazil? Nope, sorry.
Yeah, that's gonna be the tough part. So I think it's gonna have to be a lot of player trust to buy in that the DM is gonna just guarantee to show them a good time, and they need to know going into this, look, the object of the game is not to win. Today, winning means a good story we talk about in months to come.
I keep putting extra stars beside the adult conversation. You know what I mean? I think that's really how I'm going to have to sell this to them, at least probably from my perspective. They're going to know what they're getting into when they come in, but I think that's probably, I'm just going to have to sit down and tell them this is how it is. The best rule sets would be, you would say, the Cthulhu rule set, because obviously it deals with Cthulhu itself, right?
Yeah, fantastic sanity mechanics, and the whole system itself, I think, is just absolutely great. There's no levels. Again, that's its own topic. That's a completely different topic. I'm
going to have to look into that and check that out. Well, I'll probably start with Primeval Thule too. All right. Well, that's very exciting. So we easily killed 35 minutes of the first part of the show with you explaining to me what Cthulhu is. Now guess what we're going to do?
I don't know if I want to say.
We're going to make my 5th edition adventure.
Oh,
you're going to help me build my game. So,
okay.
Give me some ideas, because you've run quite a bit of stuff. Obviously, I'm thinking that everybody that shows up for this, because there's going to be 6 or 7 DMs running probably groups of 5 or 6-ish, right? This is a 40-man adventure. I don't know if you know this, but stores get rated on when they can get stuff depending on sort of the size of the store and running certain events. So anytime they run Adventure League stuff, everybody gets written down in a book and it all got submitted and they kept track of everything. But stores that run these 40-man things, they get the materials sooner, probably a week earlier than a store that didn't run these.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, so we've run them every year now. I think this will be the 3rd one, I think. But all of the DMs are under the impression that it's Cthulhu. So I'm assuming that most of them are going to run something that has to do with mind flayers. And I want to take a step away from that, maybe run some Underdark stuff, maybe run some cult, like cultists would probably be good, but I think there's going to be a lot of that as well. So
yeah. Okay, so let me give an example of another one. I ran this other one where I've not written an adventure for Cthulhu, so you definitely put me on the spot with this one. But I'll give examples of stuff I have run.
I'm going to put you to the test, bro.
So I ran this one where these investigators had to go to a neighboring town because this guy went absolutely batshit crazy, and all he would do was bark like a dog. That was it. They found him with a little girl's leg in his mouth. And so that was the kickoff point. So obviously when you hit him that hard with something in the beginning, here's this man who thinks he's a dog now, and he got found by chewing on a young girl's leg, and the rest of the girl is missing. That's immediate player buy-in.
Yeah.
If you find anybody on this planet who sits down to play a game and they don't take some type of interest in wanting to see why this guy murdered and ate a little girl's leg, you need to ask them to leave your table, because they might be trying to eat your leg in the future.
Oh, they're looking at you like your dinner. So let's simplify this then. Let's look at it as a step-by-step process. Introduction. Hey, everybody. Where's my notes here? You're all level 7 to 8. I'm going to have 6 or 7 players. The idea is Cthulhu-ish. There will be madness rules. So they're all going to sit down at my table, and I'm going to have to introduce them as a group of adventurers. Maybe they would be adventurers because they're all going to be level 7th or 8th, so they're going to have the class, right? They're going to be fighter, mage, whatever. So they would be adventurers in that sense. I was thinking maybe I could make them like people from the city, not deputies or the police or any of that kind of stuff, but say like politicians or something, like bylaw officers for the city. Do you know what I mean? Like city investigators or something like that. I'm trying to get them. What's my buy-in right out of the gate? I think that they're just going to have to be investigators.
That's a really good idea. So if there's some type of, are you doing pre-gens?
Yeah, there will be pre-gens. Okay, are they hired by the church? Hired by the city? Maybe the city, because this is kind of commonplace, especially back in the day. They're trying to keep cults down and stuff like that. So maybe they are like a private ops group for the city kind of a thing, and we're going to start from that premise. And then tales have come in of this dude with this dog, or this girl's leg that's barking like a dog.
Yeah, I would definitely maybe have some like a cleric class, and if you have some sort of ritualistic sacrifices that they find the remains of, but they don't actually catch anybody. It's like maybe it's sporadic throughout town, and maybe they want them to go investigate this stuff. And of course, talking about sacrifices, they want members of the church to go, and maybe they check out 3 or 4 locations in the city, and each of them has clues that could link all of them together so that they definitely know, okay, this is a group of people that's just moving around town and doing that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna rip my paper here because I ran. That's how many notes I've taken so far.
You could just go back and listen to this.
I don't know. I don't like listening to my own voice, but okay. So they're a group of adventurers or sleuthers or hired by the church to go investigate these unusual, what appear to be sacrifices. Are we sacrificing people, or are we going to start off sacrificing, say, like rats and leaving like little like Indian dream catcher looking chimes behind and strange markings that they're going to have to go investigate? Is that what we're doing?
Dave, that's a fantastic idea.
All right,
I think
cool.
that's great, because that's a big thing in Cthulhu too. If people find something that's related to, say, Hastur or whatever, then it starts narrowing it down.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. You may start it off small so that the sacrifice is not that big of a deal, but it's what's left behind that becomes the big deal. The sacrifice of trivial rabbits or small rats, right? That leaves behind some weird arcanic runes drawn in blood. I gotta write faster. Probably I have to take your advice and listen to this a few times to write this down.
How long you got until this event happens?
Next month. I think it's the 13th, so
Oh, okay, you got time.
I got time. The problem is I'm going to procrastinate right up until the day of, and then I'm going to be listening to this thing 5 times in one. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
All right, so we got some arcane runes, we got trivial sacrifices, we got blood, well, arcane runes drawn in blood, trivial sacrifices. That's my first one. So where are these arcane runes leading me to? They're leading me to a local library, I would assume, or back to the church.
Yeah, they would have to, that's when the investigation portion of it really starts, is they need to start figuring out, what these symbols mean. What are they related to? In a D&D type setting, it could be some ancient necromancy or ancient black magic or something, or some type of, maybe it can lead to, it's a summoning ritual. That'd be a really good thing for a Cthulhu style, because they're always trying to summon the elder things.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm writing this down. 1 second. I got a little phlegmy there, and I didn't want to work that up in my microphone. So the investigation, what do the symbols mean? So there's summoning rituals. Do I point them at a specific or very vague creature? Or let's say creature, group, thing, object, noun, person, place, or thing. Is that a verb? No, a verb is something else.
No, I think you leave it vague, because the aha moment is when they actually come across the creature.
All right, so they find these symbols. These symbols lead them to do a little bit of investigation. Would it be cool to, let's say, they go to the library to look up these rituals, only to find out that there's nothing in the library, but I'm going to point them to a person. Let's call him, Tokyo Vermalite, and he's this like sort of weird one-eyed hermit guy that has this, but this is the guy, when you walk up to his house, he's the guy that has very similar dream catchers and stuff. Would that be a way to shift it, or do you know what I mean? So they go to the library to find the runes, but they instead find out, okay, go check out this guy, he knows more.
I was just going to suggest, if you added in what, maybe I'll coin a new phrase, if you added in a blue herring.
Okay.
And I say that because red herrings will send you in a direction where it's not supposed to go, but I'm going to say blue herring because it's somebody who actually has the information, but your players are sitting back and wondering, is this just a load of shit?
Gotcha. I just had an idea. So the summoning ritual, when they go to this library or they go to the church library, I'm assuming that's, where most books would be kept and whatnot. The book is written by this guy.
Oh.
Huh? Right?
Yeah, I like that.
That's some pure genius right there. Let's check. Rack one up for me. I got to write this down here. So it's written by this dude. I got to remember that. I'll remember this. So the book is written by this dude, and they're not going to find what they're looking for in the book, but they are going to find the name of this guy. And then I'll actually put it, the hint should include written by, John Smith of basically the town that they're in. So they'd be like, hey, this guy lives in this town. Maybe we could find him and go ask him. Written by
like
a dude.
Super old book that maybe the church didn't even know was there.
Exactly.
And now I think what would be interesting, let me throw this at you, because I thought of the ending, and in adventure writing, if you think of the ending and then you build your way there, sometimes that could be a good thing too. So I thought of an ending, because a really good thing with Cthulhu too is you're not just screwing with the investigators, you're screwing with the players, which anybody who's heard anything I've ever done in the past, they know that that's something I love to do. So if you really wanted to screw with your players at the end, because this is going to mess with them as much as their characters, have the cult be children.
I was just thinking the same thing.
And when they come across the children, this elder thing, they've actually managed to summon it, is with them. And now he's using the children to do his bidding. So now your players are like, dude, we got to kill kids. You know what I mean?
The kids are overrated.
Yeah, they only got like one hit die. Screw them.
So this is what I was thinking before you said that. They're going to get the name of this guy and realize that he's in town. But when they go there, a small child will open the door, and he will introduce himself as the grandchild of this guy that wrote this book.
So the grandfather who actually wrote the book is the man behind the Iron Curtain or whatever. He's actually...
Yeah, or these kids, this kid in particular, found this book or has knowledge of summoning, and because he's a child and they're sort of innocent, he reads these books and has cast the ritual thinking that he would summon back his grandfather, who he maybe had never met, but in turn summoned back this demon. And now I don't know, just see, now I'm just throwing stuff out there, but this demon then how do we get other kids to come in? The demon just takes them over?
I think what it would have to be, I think that the kid would have to be the innocent role. Like, oh no, this is my grandpa's place. He died 10 years ago or whatever. So set him up as that innocent child, or maybe grandpa died last week. We just missed him. When in reality, the kid is just bullshitting the party the whole time.
I like that. That actually makes more sense too, because the child is in remorse, so it would sort of send him down the path of doing something that he wouldn't normally do, which is try and summon his grandpa because he misses him so badly.
Right.
Now,
but he doesn't even allude to any of that because he has a sense of what he's doing is wrong.
Exactly.
So when they do meet this child, he's just like, no, grandpa died and I inherited his place and blah, whatever. And then, the lo and behold moment is maybe it is his grandpa that is summoned, but he's summoned as a slimy tentacly thing. I can't say that word, tentacles thing or whatever. And, his grandson is so happy that everyone's willing to fight the adventurers to keep his grandpa alive.
Okay, how do I pull in other children? Gramps is in a puddle of ooze in the basement of the tower that this kid lives in. Well, actually, Grandpa had a summoning circle right down in the basement. So when this Gramps got summoned back, that would make perfect sense as to why he's in the basement. So now I need to steer the players away from this kid and the house. Maybe there's a locked room or something like that.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like a blue herring, because he's legit the end goal, but he's going to send them on a red herring chase. Do you see what I'm saying? I don't think I'm explaining that right. So
no, I got you.
He's the end goal, but he's going to send them off on the red herring so that he can finish his ritual, and something's going to happen while they're out on their red herring chase that's going to actually bring them back to that house and go, oh shit, the kid was bullshitting us the whole time.
Yeah, no, I absolutely got you. So they roll into this guy's house. Grandpa, he's nowhere to be seen. There's no sign of well, maybe there's small signs of possible summonings that maybe relate to a previous time, like maybe they're 10 days old, or you can't really tell that they're recent, but they could be over 10 days old, but they wouldn't know, right? Maybe there's some salt or some incense or something like that had been burned around that might lead them to think this guy. But inside, so now what do I put in this basement with this? Another book? Okay. A letter? So, maybe there's a letter.
So I thought of something that'd be really cool. This just popped in my head. So the first time they get there, I think one of the things that you need to do is describe how there's only a few toys laying around, so that after they go on their red herring chase and they come back to the house, now they see a whole lot more toys laying around. So that's going to give the idea that there's a lot of kids here. And I think it's as simple as they go downstairs. And this is where I definitely advise you, because I know you run with your TV and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Sirenscape is great for those background noises and stuff to help set that tone. So as they're going through the house, before they find the trap door that goes to the basement, whatever, they're hearing these sounds, lights coming through the boards, crazy green, bluish lights coming through the boards. That's going to lead them downstairs. And so when they do go downstairs, they're going to see all these kids standing around Grandpa Cthulhu,
Evil babies.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so that's going to be my premise then. They're going to show up to some simple, trivial sacrifices, rats and whatchamacallit, rats and, I had to get my whatchamacallit in there for Lamoureux. Rats, bunnies, maybe some cats and dogs. Arcane runes leads them to go look at these runes and find out what they're for. They don't really find out the information, so they go to this old man's house because he wrote the book on summoning that's in the library. Turns out he recently died, and the small boy is there. They come in because I know they're going to want to barge their way in and look around. I'll make sure that I keep anything hidden. The summoning room or whatever in the basement will remain hidden. They find a letter or something like that, I'm assuming, that's going to send them off to maybe the next city over, or something along those lines. Or
that could work. Like some of his works were taking him somewhere else, maybe somewhere else in the city. If you do it in the big city, you know.
Yeah, so he gets a letter from maybe an understudy. That would be a good one, right? Because there's an understudy. The understudy. His name is like Tommy or something like that, and Tommy was learning all of these summoning rituals and stuff like that. So he would be the next logical step to go talk to. I think that's what I'm going to do. And then Tommy, when they get over to Tommy's looking super suspicious. How do I make Tommy look super suspicious? Tommy's got the exact ruins that they saw written in the whatchamacallit, and he's also got some small animals in cages, right? So yep. Tommy's looking super suspicious with these runes and these animals. So they're thinking Tommy does it.
I don't know if you could pull this off, but would make it interesting that would send them back to the house is, going off of the name Tommy. Maybe if there was some diary of Grandpa or something like that on how he was training Tommy to be his understudy. Well, that would actually be the grandkid's dad. So what I'm getting at is they go over to find this out, and he'd be like, Tommy's my son. Oh. So that's actually the kid. So that's going to be their aha. Oh shit, it's actually the kid and not this guy.
Gotcha. Okay, so this guy needs to have sort of one of those generic names where I'm going to say, like, for example, in the diary, he's like Benjamin, but the little boy introduces himself as Ben.
Something like that, yeah.
Right? So that the name will click in, but all right. So they got to go check and see if they can't find Benjamin, thinking that he's this guy that lives across this whatchamacallit, and then he's going to turn out that his name is not Benjamin. He's going to point him back and say, it's that kid. That kid's name is Benjamin, and he's the one that was the true understudy thing, which leads them back to them. And then, right. So what I'm going to do is put him in a different town kind of a thing so that I have some time to accumulate kids, right? He's the next city over or something like that. They go on their way to this deal. On the way, maybe I'm even going to throw in some... That'll be where I throw in my combat, because everybody likes to roll some dice. They get attacked by some... I don't know. I gotta put in a combat scene in here somewhere, I'm thinking, right? Every good adventure needs a...
It's D&D. It's got to have a combat.
So are we talking... we're talking... It's far enough away that there's a middle of the night... let's say, because it's level 7, so it's got to be relatively challenging, but a middle of the night vampire attack where these undead come, or not undead, but not like your classic Dracula, but more along the lines of Van Helsing crazy vampires that are just like the crazy strong blood-sucking ones that don't wear clothes, and they just sort of have glowing eyes and long teeth, and they're just feeders and not like intellectually developed. I think that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, that'd be really good too, because it could get the players thinking it has something to do with the meta plot, when in all reality, it ain't got nothing to do with it at all.
See, we're really good at this. You didn't even realize that we would be this good at it, did you? All right, middle of the night vampire attack it is. Check that off. They hit the understudy. The understudy then sends them back, at which point there is the ending is going to be a ton of crazy little kids that are going to chew their faces off. Now,
bath salt children. They're all from Florida.
I think that these kids have gone a little nutty, and maybe they've eaten their own lips off. So when they come out, they're like lipless little kids that can't talk, and they just have their teeth hanging out, which you ever see? That's pretty...
Yeah, they're all Fire Marshal Bill.
Right?
Let me tell you something.
Let me tell you something. Maybe
that's his grandpa.
Yeah, and then they've got torches and maybe gas bombs, and they're going to light everybody on fire, or they'll just take them down to see Grandpa. At which point, that's when I introduce or end it with, okay, you found Grandpa, you've gone nutty, and now you just maybe they become one. Can you do that kind of stuff?
Cool is it if they go back and it is just little Tommy or Benjamin that answers the door, and he's still doing the innocent role. He's like, look, I found Grandpa, come on. And he reaches his hand out to take one of their hands. He takes them downstairs, and when they get downstairs, they see this monster thing or whatever. And when they turn around, that's when they see a dozen kids standing there with swords. Basically, like, you know too much.
All right, thanks for writing my adventure for me. I like the sounds of that. We'll put a pin in it right there. I'm going to add on to it. I'll be in touch over the next couple of days and, over the next month anyway, before I got to write this up. And I'll run it by you. You can give me the lowdown. You can give me the check mark, the A+ on the deal. This stupid camera. Cool. All right. Thanks for coming out, man. That was a solid hour, believe it or not, that we put into that.
Oh, was it really? Yeah, it was. Dude, thank you very much for inviting me. I had a blast, and that sounds like a little adventure I want to run now.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So check out Jamie doing the, what is this just called, the brewery? It's
going to be just the brewery now.
First one's coming out this Saturday. Are you going to throw it out as a podcast as well? Or are you just Twitching it or YouTubing it? What are you doing?
Undecided. I do want to bring everything back as a podcast format, but for the time being, I don't even know if I'm going to Twitch it on Saturday, but to say the least, it's going to get recorded this Saturday. I got you. So it'll be put out at some point in the near future. Mm-hmm. Which is good. Well, you definitely have to throw it out in podcast format. I was, they just updated my podcast today, like the application, and this one comes with stats. And like in the last 3 years, I think I've put in like almost 130 days of solid podcast listening, which is insane. Yeah, I listen to a lot of podcasts. All right, let's wrap this up, and I'm going to take us out with some show notes. The Murder Hobo Show is not affiliated with or endorsed by any companies mentioned on this show. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are on property and copyright of their respected owners. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Murder Hobo Show, copyright 2019. All rights reserved.